What's this? Toby Fox has released a statement that Deltarun is actually coming out in 2025, just in time for Undertale's 10-year anniversary. Is he trying to circumvent my prediction that Undertale would be forgotten within 10 years of its release? Like, that's already happened. Like, even 5 years ago, that was true. Yet Toby is trying to keep himself relevant. Like, oh, I'm telling you guys, I promise. Chapters 3 and 4 are coming out next year. I promise. Yeah, and they're gonna be underwhelming. Fans are going to be unhappy, and more people are going to realize that you are a complete and total fraud. This should be the absolute last time we ever hear anything from Toby Fox. Is my genuine like assessment of this, because Deltarune was the project that he came up with that to keep people invested in his brand as he like toured Japan and tried to like uh make himself a celebrity among the Japanese game dev scene, right? Like this game is what he was supposed to be working on when he was like harassing Shigesato Itoi at his company dinners, or like trying to get Yoko Shimomura to interview him, or like getting wasted at Sakurai's house and then like having to be driven home. Like instead of working on Deltarune, he was trying to LARP as a celebrity. And it has completely and totally blown up in his face, right? Anybody who knows anything about him knows that he's not really all that talented of a game dev, that he hasn't produced anything since Undertale, that like everything, he's all hype and no real substance, right? Like without his legions of fanboys, he's nothing. When you really, really get down to it, and those people are fading away. That's a big thing about Undertale, is that it still exists to a certain extent, but it never really extended to Deltarune. And as a result of that, like Toby Fox is like, it's coming out next year. It feels almost as if the brand is already just a complete and total flop. Everybody I know is saying that they're not going to bother with Deltarune until the game is 100% finished, because episodic releases are pure cancer, right? But for me, like looking at Toby Fox and what he's doing, like to me, it just reeks of desperation trying to stay relevant, because he knows that most people really hate him. Anybody who knows anything about him hates him already, but like his fans are starting to turn on him because it's taking so long. You can't LARP people into thinking that you're some indie game auteur when your game is taking as long as it has. Hollow Knight has been the sequel for that has been in production for a long time. Like it feels like the fans for that are beginning to give up on Silk Song as well, right? Like 5 years is too long of a wait. Is too long of a wait for something like this, right? This is really something you should have out by like 2 or 3, in my personal opinion. Like to me, it seems like both projects like overexerted themselves and tried to like top the old game with no real understanding of what people actually wanted, or what it was going to be. And as a result of that, like development has just exploded, right? Feature creep has stepped in, and there's just all this there's just all this content. Like there's just development is just a mess, right? Like they're just never, ever, ever going to dig themselves out of this hole, in a sense, right? Back when Hollow Knight first came out, people were saying it was better than Metroid, that it was one of the all-time greats, and now look at it. Like it's already kind of faded into obscurity. People can like meme all they want, but like, oh, Hollow Knight sold like several million copies. Yeah, how many of those people actually got past the first boss? Like you can look at the achievements. We know, okay, like Metroid maintains a larger audience that will come back like decades. That will come back from like decades from now. Like Hollow Knight is not going to have the same kind of success, right? It hasn't. Like it's not going to have endless sequels. It's not going to be like this endlessly ongoing IP. I'm not even sure if the sequel is going to be all that good. Sweet Baby Incorporated is involved with it, so like people are beginning to ask questions about Silk Song, right? Undertale, Deltarune is in a similar position because like it's in an even worse position actually because like at least Hollow Knight was good. Undertale really had nothing going for it at all other than like the hype online. So when you really look at this product and what it's doing and like the first two chapters especially, you really get this sense of like what exactly is the point of all this? Right? Like, oh, it's Undertale, but all the characters have different personalities. It's like this is like the laziest fan fiction, like DeviantArt slap I've ever seen in my life. Like it's like if you know those kids who like make like their do not steal like Sonic the Hedgehog characters, and they're just like I don't know red or something, and they have like longer like more threatening looking spikes. Like I'm Cold Steel the Hedgehog, nothing personal, kid. Like it's just like a stereotype of what kids find appealing about Sonic, right? Like, but there's no like real creativity to it. There's no charm. There's no passion. Like it's just like a an imitation of something that already exists, right? And it's like some sick, like darker and edgier parody of it, to try and look cool, right? And failing at it. Like that's basically what Deltarune is, right? Like Toby Fox somehow made DeviantArt fan fiction of his own video game. And it's just so absurd to think about as a concept. Like especially as a creative person where like you're constantly coming up with like new and interesting ideas all the time and like seeing Toby Fox just go like, well, I'll just do the same thing again, but like, ooh, it'll be slightly different. It's like, come on, like unbelievable. Like so it's so sad to see this happen. I've always been a big critic of Fox and how he conducts himself and like the culture surrounding him, but like it's interesting kind of seeing the final days of Deltarune because we know, I've said this for years, like after this project concludes, Fox is never, ever, ever going to reach the same heights, right? He is declining. He is irrelevant. He's a relic of like the Tumblr era online, right? He can't leech off of Homestuck anymore. Like he's supposed to be coasting off of his own success at this point, but he doesn't really have success to coast off of. Like it's becoming more commonly known that he plagiarized the soundtrack, right? People are beginning to realize that like Undertale is one of the worst things to happen to indie games ever, right? More and more people are starting to realize that like Fox is a total and utter fraud. And Deltarune, I think, is just going to be like an example of that. And if he ever produces anything after this, which I don't think is impossible, like you're going to see like a complete lack of interest from his audience who aren't interested in him. They were interested in like the fan culture around Undertale. And I do think that's the big prevalent thing to talk about when it relates to Undertale is that like the game itself was never popular. It was entirely carried by the ridiculous online community.